You're about to watch me read Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. I am so beyond excited to read this book, even though I've been putting it off. But I've been putting it off because I'm so excited to read it, and then when it's done, and there's no other books left in the series until December of this year, which is 2024. And I don't want it to be over, but it's finally time. It's finally time. I need to read this. I am so excited. I have some really great subscribers who are telling me about how this book is incredible. It's amazing. Some of their favorites as well. So I am really happy and I'm really excited, and I've loved all of the books in the Stormlight Archive series. So yeah, I'm really excited. So if you haven't already, you may want to check out all the parts of this series, because this is the 4th book in the series. There's also 2 novellas that I've already read, and I read the other books as well. So there will be no spoilers for this book in particular, but there will be spoilers from books in this previous series. So you may want to read it before you continue. Yeah, as you can imagine, my expectations are incredibly high for this book. Also really just like everything about it. Like, look at this hunkalunk. This is a giant book. So yeah, so without further ado, let's just like crack this book open because I'm way too excited. I've just finished part 1 and the interludes for Rhythm of War, and here are my thoughts so far. The depictions of mental health in this book, honestly in the entire series, but especially in this book, are so well done, especially how like Syl is trying to understand like what that means, because obviously like a Spren don't really get it, they don't really understand, and it's just so well done. Oh, it's beautiful. It's honestly so good. It's so well done. It's so well handled. I really love as well the way that Shallan's kind of situation is handled as well, and how that's written, how you know which characters are being talked about in those pages, and it just makes so much sense, and it's like, oh, this is so cool. So I'm honestly really loving the chapters about Kaladin and Shallan. I think that they're probably my favorite characters at the moment. I mean, they have been since like I started reading the series, but they're just so interesting to me, and I'm like really excited to see where their stories are gonna go, because there's so much to them and to the story, especially as it's starting to evolve even more. Also, we got to talk about the prologue. That gave some great information, because we get what happened all those years ago, but from Navani's perspective, and that added so much to her relationship with the kin, like who he was, what kind of person, some more hints about like what the heck was happening there, and just like her, like she's so cool. Like, I think that she's such a good character, and I love watching her just like develop and learn and being able to compare, like, this is what happened all those years ago, this is where she is right now, that kind of stuff. I will say that I'm surprised that there's no like backstory chapters yet. Maybe that's gonna happen later, but usually you get like those backstory chapters about which character the book is focused on, and I actually can't tell who this book is focused on at the moment. It's either Navani or Venli, the Parshanti woman, but I don't know if it's about like one of them in particular or not, but we're definitely getting more chapters about them than we had previously, so maybe it's about both. And speaking of Venli, I really do enjoy learning more about her character, because at first I did not like her character at all. I was like, ugh, she's like, yeah, like I wasn't into that. That wasn't a vibe. I liked her sister more, but I think that her character has grown so much throughout the series that it's really cool to be able to get these chapters to really understand her even more in the situation and like where she is, and kind of how she's growing into her own culture as well, like being pretty much one of the last, like, are they listeners or sinners? Being the last of her kind, pretty much, like left behind. And it's really cool. I really like it. I love following along with these characters. I think it's so much fun. I will say I did find this first part a little bit slow, but for a book like this massive, it's not really slow in comparison. And so I think I'm just like looking more for like the action, the character development, and all that fun stuff. But this next part has been set up to really like dive deep into that. We get some characters who are going to be going to Shardsmere, and that's going to be really cool. We have characters who are kind of doing something new that they haven't really done, or they have, but like it was a really long time ago. We have characters on different types of missions. The interludes gave us some good information about some other stuff that maybe happened. So yeah, I'm really excited to see where this goes. So I will continue to read, and I will update you when I finish the next part and interlude. So I will see you then. I just finished part 2 and the interludes, and oh my goodness, okay, yes, everything that's happening with Shallan and Adolin's like kind of story in Shadesmere is so cool. And then like what they may have discovered, but maybe it's not true, but maybe it is, and I'm like, I don't know if it's true, but they caught him lying, and it's like, can he lie? I guess he can lie. So much is happening. Yeah, that's really, really good. And then also just the interesting interactions that our characters have with the Spren of the world and what the Spren think and all of this. So it's so cool just to follow around the characters, and the way that that part ended was so dramatic, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what's gonna happen next? But these characters I don't believe are in this upcoming part. They are not. I just checked. And Kaladin's story, of course, is fascinating to me as well. I really, really love how realistic everything that Kaladin is going through is depicted. It's so well done. It's so well handled. It's so accurate. It's honestly incredible. I don't think I've ever seen it handled as well as I like ever in anything. Stormlight does the best job when it comes to this. And it's just so well done. And watching just as he interacts with people and starts to notice things, and also tries to run away from like his own mind, and it's like, oh, Kaladin, I just want you to be happy. And then because it's like they just want to make Kaladin sad all the time, and I'm just like, okay, Kaladin, maybe he's finally gonna be happy, and then boom, literally stuff happens, and it's like, oh well, he's not allowed to be happy, I guess. Like, Kaladin is not allowed to be happy, and I just want him to be happy, and he's just like, he's such a nice guy, and he just doesn't need to suffer so much. But yeah, he's just gonna suffer, and it's really sad, and he thinks that he just has to suffer all the time, and I got a lot of feelings. And then of course we get more about Venli and Navani's stories as well, which I think that that's cool, because you get to learn, like, on Venli's side, more about the fused and the different types of fused and like the deeper ones and all of this. And it's so fascinating how it all works together, and like where they all come from, and kind of the range of this sort of like species that exists, and just how like different and diverse it is, and different powers and stuff. I think that that's really cool. And then on Navani's side, I think that it's really cool to be able to see kind of the technology that we discovered in Dawnshard, well, I guess that the Lopen discovered, and how it's being brought over into this like a year later, and how it's creating these amazing like technological advancements in the world. It's so cool, and it's really cool to just see Navani in her element and just doing her thing, and also just trying to figure out like what is going on, like who am I being communicated by, all this. It's really fun. And then going back to Adolin and Shallan's story for a sec, I am really loving just the way that Shallan's character is. Like, I always find her so interesting, and especially with like her personas and stuff, and seeing kind of how that's evolved kind of in the direction that she thought was good but isn't actually the best for her, kind of things going on. And it's like, yeah, it's rough. But Adolin is so sweet to her, and he's just like, he cares, and he's trying his best to help, and I'm just like, That's a good husband. That's a good husband. So good. I have this theory about horses now. We know that like Adolin, he talks to his horse. Well, it's actually his dad's horse, but it's like his horse now. And they kind of interact and talk, and the horse understands him and kind of in a way like speaks, but not really like speaks, you know, like it snorts and kind of talks in that manner. And what I thought was interesting is that when they brought the horse into Shadesmere, there was kind of like this misty, maybe kind of foggy aspect to the horse that Adolin noted. And then when we meet some honor spren ride in the not horses, and Adolin is like, why do you have horses? Like, what is going on? And they're like, spren aren't just like the creations of man. And so like, does that mean that horses have spren? Like, or are horses spren? Like, I feel like there's more into that than, well, I mean, maybe I'm making it seem like it's more than actually is, but I'm going with this theory about horses and spren. I feel like there's something there, and I'm really interested to see and like how complex the world can be. It's honestly, it's beautiful. I love it. And the interludes were great as well because they provide even more context into like what's about to happen or what's happening while our main characters are doing stuff. So we kind of got some perspectives from Lift, who honestly, ever since Edge Dancer, she's really grown on me, and like, yeah, she's really endearing and she's really cute. And she's so funny, and I love following her around, and she's just so bizarre. It's beautiful. And so kind of her interactions and kind of a bit of a cliffhanger that her story ended at. We got Taravangia's story, which continues to just be so interesting, especially all this stuff with the diagram and Odium, like all this. It's like, I wonder what's gonna happen next. And it's like, he's just kind of going with the vibes at this point, but like, it's really interesting to see. I think that was probably his best interlude. Maybe his second best. I remember when we first found out about him, I was like, oh, so that was pretty shocking. So maybe this is the second best one. I just thought that it was really cool, like, because he has the dumb version and the smart version of himself, and how it's the emotional aspect and then like the logical aspect. So that was really cool as well. And there was Vyers interlude. I don't care. That's all I gotta say. I don't care about him. He's gross. So yeah, I'm gonna continue to read, and I will update you when I finish the second part that I'm on. There's a bunch of characters being featured in this one, so I'm really excited. I always love when it's like a bunch of different characters in a part, because then it's like, this is happening here, this is happening there, this is happening here, and that's happening this, but it's also happening at the same time, and it's like, so much is happening. And honestly, when I was racing this, so like I have like my Apple Watch, right? And usually my rest and heartbeat is like 51 or something, but during the invasion scene, it clocked up to 71 because I was just like on the edge of my seat, so excited about it. So I'm sure that will continue to happen as I continue to read. So I will see you in my next update. I just finished part 3 and the interludes, and this was a really good part. The amount of like action and all this cool stuff that happened, and like Kaladin and the Sibling and Navani, and like how those stories are kind of like intertwined, I thought was really, really cool. And that scene with Kaladin and his dad broke my heart. It really broke my heart, it really did. And yeah, it made me sad. It's also, I think that this must be Venli's book, because we're getting a backstory about her and her sister. At first I was like, it's either Venli or Navani's book, but I definitely think this is Venli's book. And I think that's interesting because like her culture and the way that she grew up and like learned about that is so fascinating. It's just like, I'm really impressed at like how complex of a world that Brandon Sanderson makes, especially because like when in Navani's chapters, we get so much information about the technology, how stuff works, how she's discovering like these forms of light and stuff. And I'm like, sometimes I have to pause and go, my brain can't understand what's happening, but like it makes sense, but also like, wow. I think one of my favorite scenes from this part was definitely with Dalinar and the Stormfather. I think that the bond that they have and the kind of interactions that they have is really interesting, and how Dalinar is always pushing the Stormfather to like step outside his comfort zone. And the conversation that involved Kaladin, Stormfather, and Dalinar, that was really cool. And I'm like really surprised that Kaladin does not have a chapter in this upcoming part that I'm about to read. I think that's the first time ever in the entire series that Kaladin is not featured. And yeah, but I'm really excited because Adolin and Shallan are in this part, and they weren't in the last part. In the last part, the part before that had this big like, oh my goodness moment. We don't know if it's true or not. And I'm like, I want to know. So I finally get to find out, I think, in this part. I also absolutely love the interludes for part 3. They were so good. One of them was interesting because it was Chiri Chiri, who's like the little creature that hangs out with Rhysand. And how on earth can Brandon Sanderson like accurately write the thoughts of a creature and make it believable? Like, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. And it was honestly really funny as well, because like all the creature really knows is like sleep and eat. And I'm like, that kind of makes sense. And it's cute as well, like that she doesn't call them humans, like she calls them the soft ones. I'm like, oh, like yeah, they're soft. They don't have shells or like any of that kind of armor that like that creature has. So it was pretty cool. And then also having read the novella really gave a lot of good context into Chiri Chiri and for Rhysand as well, and like kind of what's going on with that story. And then Szeth's story is also super interesting. I want to see more Szeth. I imagine he'll probably have his own book at some point, because like the only chapters we get are like the interludes or in Edgedancer, and so like I really want to know more about him and his character and his thought process and the sword and like all this stuff. So there was a really good interlude with him that I really enjoyed. And then all of the ones about Taravangia, that guy, the old man, his chapters make me really sad. They make me really sad. Every single time I read it, just makes me sad. So yeah, I really enjoyed this part. I thought it was really, really well done. Super exciting, so much going on, so much tension, so much action, so much mystery. The way that it ended, oh my goodness, that was a good reveal. I really like that as well. So I will continue to read, and I will update you when I finish the next part. I imagine there's probably only 4 parts in this book. It doesn't look like there's room for 5, but maybe there is, who knows. But I will update you when I finish this part and the interlude, so I will see you then. I just finished part 4 and the interludes, and like, oh my goodness. This book, my friends, this book. So even though Kaladin's name wasn't in the like characters to be featured in this part, he was in it. So I don't know, he was in it. So that was like, cause I was like, oh, like Kaladin's never not been in any, but yeah. I was wrong on that. He was in that. And there was a really, really great scene with him and Wit, and then like the story, the dragon and the dog, or the dog and the dragon. I thought that was so, so good. And I just, like, I love anytime Wit is around. He's so interesting. He's so fascinating. The stories that he tells with all the meanings and the advice, just like, he's such a great character. I love Wit so much. And like his conversations with Kaladin. And then also, I didn't mention it, but the flute, I thought was interesting because Lift had found a flute and she has it in her little like stash of stuff, and so I wonder if that is Wit's flute. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I imagine it would be, like, because why else would there be a flute, right? And then Shallan and Adolin's story in Shadesmere, oh, I think that was honestly the best part of the entire book. I loved the trial. The trial was really great. I loved Shallan, just everything that's going on with her personas, with Pattern, everything about that I think is just incredible and amazing. And Adolin's entire story, like with the trial, I got chills, especially with the like, you cannot have my sacrifice. Oh, chills. It was literally the same like, oh my goodness feeling that I had in Oathbringer when Dalinar's like, you cannot have my pain. Like, oh, it was incredible. It was so good. And then just like the reactions and the characters and all of it, incredible, amazing. I love it. I honestly, I stayed up late because I had to finish that like chapter, and I'm so happy. And it changes everything that we know. And I'm just really excited to see where that's gonna go and how that's also gonna affect Shallan, because some of the stuff that we learn in this book, this is gonna change everything. And I'm so excited to see that. I also, of course, love the chapters about fellow Bridge 4 members. The one in particular that really stood out to me was David's, because we don't ever really know anything about David, but he started to make more of an appearance in this book, and he got his own chapter, and we got a bit of his backstory, what everything was like, how he ended up being a bridgeman, like all of that. I thought that was really great. And the stuff with the sibling is really cool. And then we have all of this great background story with Venli and like with her sister. Venli and Raylan had a really good kind of conversation, which was cool because like they're the last ones, right? They're the last sinners there. Or are they the last listeners? I'm getting really confused if they're sinners or listeners. I think they're listeners though. And they had a really great conversation. There's a lot of really cool development happening, especially because like I imagine this is Venli's book because we get all her backstory stuff, and her character really has evolved so much, and we got so much fascinating information about what happened all those years ago. And I want to know, like, who was that human? Who was that? I'm not sure. And Navani's discoveries and just the time to focus on her passions, I think has been really great to just read about and discover with her. The technology and the science behind it is so complex, and I'm like in awe that this world has been crafted like this. It feels so real, and like I am like half convinced that Brandon Sanderson is like a time traveler and like a planet traveler, and he goes to these other worlds, he writes about them, and then he comes back here and he publishes the books, because these are so incredible. The world building, the characters, how everything just continues to grow and evolve, and how it's all hinted at the beginning as well, like the first book, The Way of Kins. This is good stuff. This is really good stuff. And I screamed at what the Lady of Wishes did when there was the anti-void light section that was going on, and I'm like, but also like, whoa. Yeah, I'm having a really great time with this book. It is really, really good. I'm definitely about to finish it. I'm in the final part 5, so I will update you when I finish part 5 and the interlude. So I will see you then with my final thoughts. I just finished Rhythm of War and I am not okay. The amount of emotions I went through reading this book, especially like the last 150 pages, my soul was destroyed. I hate Vyre so much. That entire scene, everything that happened in that scene, so much emotion. I literally okay, wait, we're gonna backtrack for a second. First off, I absolutely loved Kaladin and the Pursuer. I thought that was such a great kind of like side story that was happening, and the tension and the buildup and the way that Kaladin was goading him. I love that so much. When we get to the next part of what happened though, I literally like shook this book and like screamed because of what happened. And I'm not okay about it. I'm so upset about it. I'm so upset about it. It broke my heart. Tore it into 175,000 million pieces. And then, honestly, don't think I'm gonna recover because of that scene. I'm not gonna recover. But I really respect what Dalinar and the Stormfather did. Just like giving him that extra little bit of help he needed. That was really good. But I was like sweating the entire time. Then I got such major chills, and it was like, oh yeah, like so many emotions. I went from like, haha, like you get him, and then screaming, crying, throwing up, all that stuff, and then being really scared, and then being really like anxious, and then being really like excited. Like I feel like I went through so many emotions in the span of like 5 minutes. It was so good. Kaladin is honestly one of my favorite characters, probably like of all time. I think he's such an amazing character. He's such a great hero. He's so real. He's got his struggles. He's got complex relationships with people. And he's just so good. He's so great. I love Kaladin. Also, I kind of low-key ship Kaladin with Leshwi, if that's how you say her name. I don't know. I feel like there's something there. We'll see. Obviously, I've just finished the last book, so I know as much as everybody who's watching this, if you're not watching this in like the future. But I'm predicting this. Maybe there's going to be some kind of like romantic thing that goes on, and maybe that's also going to kind of like unite like the listeners and the sinners and all of them with the humans. So it's my prediction. Also, even though it was Venli's book, I love the focus that it had on Navani. I think really understanding her character and her worries and her fears, and really just seeing her brain work at what she's so great and amazing at, I thought was great. My heart broke for her in so many different scenes, and like she thought that she's not worthy and like all of this, and then what happens with her and the sibling, like again, chills. And then also like her complex relationship with the Lady of Wishes, that entire thing was so interesting because it's like they respect each other, but they're also working against each other, and then they're working with each other, and then they're working against each other, and they're trying to outsmart each other. Everything about that was so great, especially what happened when like Vair came by. That I think was just excellent. I wish there was more Dalinar. Like, I get it that it wasn't his book, but after Oathbringer, I really, really loved just like his character and learning about him and his struggles and stuff. So I felt like there was definitely some lacking of Dalinar in this kind of book, but scenes that he did have were really, really good. They were well done. They were well constructed. The way that he was helping Kaladin without actually being there, like, it was precious. And then also him working with other characters to try to figure out this whole contract aspect and like the champion thing to help figure out a way to defeat Odium. I thought that whole thing was super great. Okay, and speaking of Odium, wow. That was a huge, my brain is just like goo. It's so hard. Obviously, I can't spoil it for you, but wow. If you read the book, you know what I mean, like what happens with Odium and like how that whole thing came to be, like wow. I also really loved Raylan's character development as well. Like, there was just so many great things that happened to every single one of these characters throughout the entire book, and I love the focus on some of them that we don't really get to see that much. And Raylan deserves everything in the world. He's a precious boy, and I want to protect him at all costs. I love Raylan. He's so good. And Venli, wow, her character development in this one was so impressive that it made me a character who I didn't originally like. I did end up liking. Like, she's not my favorite of all time, but I really respect her more and am excited to see where her character is going to continue to go and grow. And it's great. I want to know, who was that human? And then of course, Shallan and Adolin's kind of final chapter for this book I thought was really good as well. I loved, she's just like, everyone's growing up so much. I love it so much. What I'm really interested to know is, who is this Elle character? Who is this? Who are they? I don't recall them being mentioned before, but maybe it was one of those like small things. Like, I know Odium was mentioned in The Way of Kins, and I remember that because Kaladin had mentioned it to Syl, and Syl was like, oh, don't talk about it. I don't want to hear about that. I remember that, but I don't remember this Elle character being mentioned. But I have a feeling, knowing that there's like one more book before the next arc starts, I have a feeling this Elle character is going to be very important. And then the stuff that was happening with the Spren, what Dalinar had discovered involving the Spren in the cognitive realm, and I think that's going to become a bigger part in the upcoming arcs as well. Also, because it was like Venli's backstory, we also learned a lot about her sister Eshene, and I gotta say, the last chapter that had Eshene like right before she died, wow, that would have changed everything. If she didn't die, imagine how different the story would be. Imagine how quick things could have been done. It's very interesting, but I think it was a good choice, and I think it also showed like the humanity of certain characters, and it also just was a really good completion for her, because I wondered when we first saw her corpse, like something, I was like, I think I might have pointed out in a video, I'm not entirely sure, but I was like, that's suspicious. What was that I saw there? And then it finally wraps up in here and you understand what it was, and it was great. It was really good. And I love that she was always fighting against it, you know? I really like Eshene's character. And last but not least, all of these epilogues always involve Wit, our lovely, lovely man. That epilogue, again, it gave me chills. I was like, what? Like, that happened? I am very nervous about what's gonna happen in the next book. It comes out in December, hopefully. And I'm really nervous because like things are so different. Like, especially knowing that that character could do that to other characters, like how much is that gonna change everything? It's more strategic now as well, so. So yeah, Rhythm of War was incredible. It was excellent. It did not feel like a gigantic hunk of a book. Like this was like 1,200 pages or something. Biggest book I think that I've ever read, because I think Oathbringer was like slightly smaller by like 10 pages or something. But yeah, this is the biggest book I ever read. It took me an entire week to read this book, and I loved every single second of it. I love this book. I love the pacing. Definitely there was parts where it was a little bit slow. Sometimes it was a little bit hard to understand like the science aspect, but I just don't got a brain for science, you know? But I think that it was so good anyways. Like the way that everything built up and you're stressed with the characters. It's also the first book that does like a big time skip. Usually the books take place like immediately after, like a couple weeks or so after, but this was like a whole year after. And I just think it's great. I love the character development. I love the backstories. I love how everything comes together. Even stuff, like I said, that's mentioned in like the earlier books, everything always comes together. It's always weaved in a way. And I'm excited to see like, what are the rest of the books gonna be like? Because we know that he has this whole thing planned out, and I'm so excited. I'm gonna be in like my 30s or 40s though when the whole series is done, or probably even longer if it's every 5 years. Wait a second, let me do some math real quick. 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. I'm gonna be like 50. What? Okay, I'm not gonna think about that. Anyways, yeah, the entire book was super, super good. The entire series as a whole is incredible. The world building, the religion, the creatures, the characters, the inclusion as well is incredible. Like the sibling always uses they, them in there anytime it's mentioned. And I thought that was like really great. We have a bunch of these different diverse characters. The inclusion of mental health, mental illness is so accurately done, as well as like physical attributes that people live with. Like they live with these things, and Brandon Sanderson captures this so well. It's so good. So I'm very excited because I am definitely giving Rhythm of War a total of 5 stars. It is a 5-star book, 100%. Were there parts where I was like a little bit like, I don't really know what's happening, or it was a little bit slow? Yeah, but a book this size, like there's gonna be times like that, but everything makes sense. Every single thing that you learn is worth it. The entire thing is worth the ride. And now that I've finished the entire series, I'm gonna give the entire series, it's like a 5-star series. It is so good. I would say like Way of Kings probably was like a 4.5. Words of Radiance, 5 stars, 100%. Oathbringer was probably 4.5 as well. And then this is 5 stars. I had an incredible time reading this series, and I thank everybody who has kind of stuck around on the whole ride with me as I started this series earlier this year. And now I finished it. I will, of course, be getting the 5th book when it comes out, as soon as it comes out. So I'm very excited about that. I'm excited for the cover reveal. I have to read some more Brandon Sanderson, 100%. So I will be reading the Mistborn series next. And I also have Tress of the Emerald Sea from Brandon Sanderson. And I do plan on reading all the other aspects of the Cosmere. So if you are interested in more Brandon Sanderson, if you need more Brandon Sanderson in your life, like I certainly do, don't worry, all the Stormlight Archive is done for now. I'm not done with all of Brandon Sanderson. So if you like Brandon Sanderson, definitely subscribe, because I will continue to make more Brandon Sanderson content. So the next book that I will be reading is The Ministry of Time by Kayleen Bradley. This is really cool because it's like a time travel romance, but not in the way you think. It's like these people, and they've invented time travel, and they bring over people from the past to learn how to live in the modern world, and then they kind of find their soulmates that way, because maybe your soulmate isn't in your kind of century or anything like that. So I think it's a really cool concept. I've heard a lot of really great things about this, so this is what I'll be reading next. For my birthday, I am going to be buying the Mistborn trilogy, so don't worry, that video will be coming soon as well. But in the meantime, I will be reading The Ministry of Time. So if you're interested in watching me read The Ministry of Time or any other books that happen to be on my TBR, you can definitely follow me in my Goodreads as well if you want to see what I'm currently reading and what I plan to read as well. It is in the description below. And if you haven't already, definitely hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you notice that my nails are now painted and you think they look pretty cool because I did them myself, definitely hit the like button and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!